Welcome back to The Explainer. So let's jump right in with a question. Have you ever experienced something so just profoundly beautiful, so completely outside the bounds of normal everyday life that when you actually tried to tell someone about it, the words just evaporated? You know that feeling? Well, today we are unpacking a truly fascinating challenge. We're looking at a deeply compelling historical fragment where one author attempts to capture a transcendent heavenly vision. It's this wild encounter with a vast assembly of celestial beings performing for their creator. But think about it. How do you use limited earthly human words to paint a picture of something completely divine? The text we're examining today wrestles directly with this very question, and honestly, watching the author navigate this linguistic tightrope is absolutely mesmerizing. Okay, let's dive into this. The author kicks things off with this totally upfront admission of defeat. They say, "Of the singings of the angels, which it is impossible to describe." Before we even get into the meat of the text, the author is straight up telling us that human language is fundamentally bankrupt when it comes to this task. The auditory beauty of this experience is so profound that it inherently defies our vocabulary. It's a paradox right out of the gate, setting out to document a spiritual encounter while explicitly stating that documentation is, well, impossible. But honestly, this is absolutely my favorite part of this whole text. Despite explicitly stating that it is literally impossible to describe, the author just goes right ahead and tries to describe it anyway. I mean, it perfectly captures that irrepressible human urge to share profound joy and amazement. When we encounter something transcendent, even if we know our words are going to fall short, we simply cannot remain silent. We have to try. This irony sets up a beautiful, paradoxical narrative arc that we'll be following through the rest of this explainer, as the author pushes language to its absolute breaking point to give us a glimpse of the divine. Section 1. Describing the impossible. So, since just shrugging and saying it was indescribable doesn't exactly make for a great story, the author has to start somewhere. They write, "In the midst of the heavens I saw." Now, this isn't abstract theology or some secondhand rumor. The author grounds this mystical experience as a direct, first-hand witness account, and they place themselves right smack in the center of the celestial realm, in the midst of the heavens. By claiming this central eyewitness vantage point, the author demands our attention. They're literally pulling us up into the heavens with them, promising to report exactly what is unfolding before their very eyes. Section 2. The Armed Celestial Choir. Once we are positioned in the midst of the heavens, the author introduces the first visual element of this heavenly vision. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how highly surprising it actually is. Look at the specific terminology the author uses here: armed soldiers serving the Lord. If you look at historical artistic representations of angelic choirs, from the Renaissance or classical eras, your mind usually jumps to serene figures in flowing white robes, softly plucking harps or lutes. We expect pure softness. But the very first thing this text registers is a military presence. These are celestial soldiers. They're armed. It's a striking image of power and discipline stationed right at the heart of the divine realm. And this creates a really beautiful cognitive dissonance. On one hand, we have the aggressive, forceful implications of martial imagery. These are, after all, armed soldiers. But on the other hand, their entire purpose in this vision is peaceful and artistic. They are serving the Lord by making music. It suggests that in this transcendent space, absolute power and ultimate harmony are not mutually exclusive. The sheer might of a cosmic army is entirely channeled into the peaceful, harmonious act of creation and worship. Moving on to Section 3, Sounds of the Heavens. Let's see how this builds, because now the author shifts our focus from the visual shock of armed angels to the overwhelming sensory details of what they actually hear. The vision transforms from a sight into this incredibly immersive physical auditory experience. The author explicitly names the musical instruments being played, noting that the soldiers serve with organs and with tympana. Just to briefly ground our source material here, tympana are ancient drums or tambourines. So this isn't just ethereal, floating singing. The presence of drums means there's a beat, there is rhythm, there is a driving, percussive force behind this heavenly chorus that you would literally feel vibrating in your chest. And then the author just starts stacking these sounds to convey the sheer, overwhelming volume. We've got the driving beat of the tympanae, the booming resonance of organs, an incessant voice, a sweet voice, various singing, all happening at the exact same time. By layering these specific elements one on top of the other, the text brilliantly mimics an enveloping, overwhelming crescendo.
You can almost hear the immense, unified wall of sound building and echoing right across the celestial realm. And this brilliantly illustrates how the author uses repetition to make up for the limits of language. Look closely at the phrase sweet and incessant voice. They actually repeat these words in the text. Sweet conveys the pure, unadulterated auditory beauty of the song, while incessant means unending without pause. It is a completely unending chorus. By looping these words over and over, the author forces us to understand that this music doesn't fade, it doesn't take a breath, and it doesn't lose its perfect sweetness. It's an eternal loop of perfect harmony.
Section 4. Astonishment and Delight. So what exactly happens to a frail human mind when it's exposed to an eternal, booming, angelic army? Well, the author notes that this singing astonishes every mind. The root of the word astonish implies being struck by lightning or left completely senseless. This auditory beauty entirely surpasses logical understanding. You can't analyze it, you can't categorize it, and you certainly can't describe it. It completely short-circuits our brain's normal way of processing reality, overwhelming the human intellect in the best way possible. So the crucial point is right here. So wonderful and marvelous is the singing of those angels. The author has taken us on this wild journey from impossible description through a visual army, straight into a booming orchestra, and lands on sheer wonder. This passage captures the completely transcendent nature of divine worship. It exists on a plane so far above our own that the only accurate words left to describe the harmonious actions of these angelic beings are simply wonderful and marvelous. Which brings us to the final, honestly, just beautiful resolution of the text. After trying to process something massive, overpowering, and entirely indescribable, how does the author feel? I was delighted listening to it. After all that cosmic grandeur, the text grounds itself in a simple, deeply personal feeling of profound joy. The witness isn't terrified by the armed soldiers or deafened by the incessant drums. They are simply purely delighted. It's a beautifully human reaction to experiencing the ultimate divine harmony. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. The author of this text reached across the centuries to try and share a glimpse of profound, indescribable wonder with us. And honestly, it leaves me wondering about our own lives today. When was the last time you heard something, maybe a piece of music, the wind in the trees, a voice, that was so profoundly beautiful it bypassed your logical understanding entirely and left you completely without words? Keep your ears open. The world is full of beauty, just trying to astonish us if we only take the time to listen.